But first tonight, 2 days after a powerful earthquake struck Sikkim, it is only now that rescue teams have been able to reach the epicentre, Mangan, which is near Gangtok. 80 people are now dead and authorities fear that the numbers could be much higher as they finally get into the interiors. My colleague Sudhiranjan Sen reports from the ground.
On the road to Mangan, more signs of the tragedy that struck here on Sunday. A vehicle carrying 6 people hit by a boulder dislodged from the mountains out here was thrown into the river. This is a tributary of the Tista. 6 people were in that car, 1 has been recovered, the rest 5 were missing. The Sikkim police today has been able to get the mangled remains of the car on the bottom of the river. The crane that you see behind me is being used to pull that vehicle up. Police say out here that most likely the rest 5 are still strapped in that vehicle. With Biswajit Das, on the road to Mangan, Sudhiranjan Sen for NDTV 24/7. Across this huge landslide lies Mangan, Lachung, Yangthong, completely cut off. In the span of next 11 to 12 kilometers, there are at least 10 such huge landslides that are there.
Fenla, just 30 kilometers from Gangtok, 3 days after the earthquake. The signs of devastation present all around. Roads are blocked and reports say at least 24 people have died in the villages now cut off by this landslide. From muscle power to machine power, the army engineers are giving it all they have. They were the first to reach here, but despite all their efforts, they haven't been able to move these big boulders. Left with no option, they decided to blast through the slide, drilling explosives into the rock. Homes in Mangan, meanwhile, have been evacuated. Most are trying to head to Gangtok, and anxious families wait for some news from here. Among them, P. Sherpa, who hasn't heard from his 16-year-old son studying in a Mangan hostel.
हॉस्टल में हैं बच्चे अभी 2-3 दिन से जो है कोई कांटेक्ट ही नहीं हो रहा है और हमारे सास ब्रदर भी उधरी है अच्छा कोई पता नहीं चल रहा है इसलिए जो है
Others realize how lucky they were to get away. These 3 were out shopping in Gangtok when the earthquake struck. Given the enormous challenge ahead, the army knows there's not a moment to waste till this road is cleared. The boulders drilled and the explosives planted, the men fall back. The boulders are blown to bits. But it's not only the army. Villagers like Arkithapa are doing their bit too. A small landslide destroyed his home and it'll be a long time, he says, before he can rebuild his life. And as villagers try and pick up the pieces, life along National Highway 31 continues. With Mursalin and Sudhiranjan Sen, Chetan Bhattacharjee for NDTV.
Well, joining us from Gangtok tonight is my colleague Sudhiranjan Sen. And Sudhi, I think the very fact that we can actually contact you today shows some signs of progress. We couldn't even reach you on the phone for most of the last couple of days. What is the latest on the rescue and relief effort at this time?
Well, Nidhi, to begin with, I mean, things are improving. Mangan, the army has reached Mangan. The special forces had earlier been inserted, but today medics have reached in, relief have gone in. In fact, at Dekchu, which is slightly away from Mangan, we hear that some bodies have also been recovered. The army is still pushing on. The 31A access still not yet completely clear. That's what we get to hear from our army sources, but likely to be clear within tomorrow. The Dekchu access has been cleared, more and more people, moving in. But as more people move in and more bad news is coming in, we get to hear an entire bus carrying laborers have been washed away. So the search is still going on. So it's mixed, more or less good and bad news coming in. Nidhi.
Right. And so the authorities also fearing that as they get into some of these other areas that the number of dead could also go up. Are they still very concerned about that?
Yes, there is a lot of concern about it. In fact, the army, the state government, is seriously concerned because what actually has happened to Mangan and the areas around there, not still clearly known. Although people have reached, you must understand that these, villages are far flung. They're up on the hills. It's not very easy to reach them. Terrain is bad. Heli or sorties have been done. They have, assessed them from air. But now as people walk in and physically, reach there, likely that's what they're saying, the toll can go up.
Now, Sudhi, one of the things that we're actually going to talk about now is the poor infrastructure in that area, and that has really been one of the reasons why, despite the bad weather, even then, the Air Force couldn't get in for 2 days, and that's really, to many people, just shocking.
Well, I mean, Didi, there is terrain is a huge issue. Yes, infrastructure is not at all good. I mean, if you look at National Highway 31A, in some places, it appears to be a joke that it's called a National Highway 31A. But then, if you look at the terrain, the kind of weather that is there, and the landslides that happens more or less all through the year, more or less, it takes a great effort to keep them open and have all-weather roads. Which is why the army, because Sikkim, this part of India is very, very strategic. It just looks into China. So the army and the other forces have been insisting that need more all-weather roads, spreading straight up to the border, connecting more or less all the villages. Infrastructure has been an issue all along. Nidhi.
All right, Sudhir Ranjan Sen reporting there from Gangtok. Thanks very much. And that brings us to our first question tonight as we look at the rescue and relief efforts in Sikkim. Is the Northeast a stepchild? Has poor infrastructure got in the way of rescue work? Shouldn't we be doing much more to build infrastructure in these areas, given their strategic importance as well? And is that one reason why we are suffering now when such a big disaster has taken place? Well, we have the Congress's national spokesperson, Renuka Chaudhary, with us. From the BJP, we have national spokesperson Nirmala Sitharaman. And we have a very active audience tonight that has a lot to say on the matter. Renuka Chaudhary, there are 8 states in the Northeast, and they're all connected to the rest of the country by one national highway. And today, many of those who've traveled to these areas for years say that this is one of the reasons why we're suffering today with relief and rescue work. We haven't paid enough attention to these areas.
Nidhi, I don't think that's collectively true. There's always room for improvement. We must always do more along with changing times and growing populations. But I don't think I would ever call the Northeast a stepchild, because I know that as tourism minister, I gave money unstintingly. I don't have the figures instantly, but I do. You can verify that. And we did it to increase infrastructure there. State governments also must take the initiative. And we must help reach there. We promoted tourism in a huge way to bring in revenue to these states. I've been there. I've travelled all over the Northeast quite extensively.
But it's just one national highway.
I appreciate.
And therefore, when the landslides happened, they couldn't reach these areas.
I appreciate, but that's true of any natural disaster, Nidhi. It can happen even in a full infrastructure place.
NDTV's cricket app, Android and iPhone. Fastest scorecard, special analysis, and much more. Download free. ndtv.com/apps.